Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. We're looking at watches. All of them are in stock and for sale. Reach out to Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase, pricing, and availability questions regarding all of these watches. So we're starting out with the ultimate piece. I normally finish with the grandest watch in the set, but I feel like burying this lead would be a sin against watchmaking. So it is the Jaeger-LeCoultre Gyrotourbillon 2, officially the Grand Reverso Gyrotourbillon 2. Now, this model came out in 2008. It was the successor to the 2004 Gyrotourbillon developed by Eric Coudray. This one in the iconic Reverso case. It has two separate tourbillons. So we have one that rotates in single-minute circuits, and then another inner, much faster tourbillon that makes one rotation every 18.75 seconds. You can also see that it's free-sprung and uses a cylindrical hairspring with inner and outer curves. The timepiece features an array of fine finishing elements that are leagues beyond what you would conventionally expect even from JLC. Take a look at the bridge that bears the hands. You can see these interior bevels where they meet in sharp creases. Now, there are 8 of them inside the structure, but then there's also 4 outside. So you've got 12 interior angles just on that one component. The bridges are nickel, copper, zinc, or maillot, but they've been rhodium plated to make them silver with a pyramid style finish. And you can see beveling everywhere, mirrored, broad, and beautiful, with a combination of bevel and media blast on the insane Gyrotourbillon design. Now, this is a big watch, a 75-piece limited edition in platinum. So it is about 36.5 millimeters wide, 55.4 lug to lug, 16.5 thick, and it's so massive that there is a case lock feature. Now, when it's disengaged, you can move the case conventionally to rotate it, but when it's engaged, the case cannot fly open due to its weight, so it's secured on your wrist. Now, turning all of this over, by the way, there is an AM/PM indicator adjacent to the hands. That is a day-night indicator, not a second time zone. Rolling it over, though, there are some complications. We have a power reserve indicator that measures the 50 hours of manual wind power reserve, and then next to that we've got a stop works, and this will stop the watch when it has too little energy in the mainspring to keep accurate time. It will also stop at the high end of power reserve to prevent overwinding. What's impressive here is that you get the 50 hours of power reserve despite this manic gyrotourbillon, and the watch gives a very reasonable power reserve considering how much energy this type of complication draws. You'll also appreciate that we have Côte de Genève on the reverse side, we have perlage, we have beveling, we have satination, we even have small and beautiful details. Like you can see that the crown wheel teeth and the ratchet wheel teeth, they're actually micro-beveled, which is a beautiful detail. And you can see that the gadroons, or the strakes that run around the case, they're actually formed so that they dip down and around the Gyrotourbillon. A very, very special watch and a landmark piece from JLC. The case has an incredibly sharp and crisp feel to it. And when I throw it on my wrist, you can see it is too big for me. So you're going to need a wrist of, at least in my opinion, 18 centimeters circumference to wear this well. My wrist is 16, and I don't even think slightly larger than my wrist is going to pull it off. I think you need to be decisively larger than my wrist, but what a machine. And unlike the original Gyrotourbillon, this one in a case and form factor that really is inextricably linked to JLC history. If you're going to own a Gyrotourbillon, this may be the one to own from a design standpoint. Really special. It comes with a full double deployant folding clasp, as is often the case with JLC folding clasps. If it's double deployant, it's going to be white gold. So you can see there's a little contrast between the white of the case and the warmer tone of the buckle. Take a quick look at the reverse side, and you can see that these are individually numbered. A very, very special watch. Now, to take a quick look at something that's maybe more palatable to a mortal budget, we have this lovely little Ville coaxial chronometer chronograph that came out in 2004. So this is steel, 35 millimeters in diameter. It's 12.7 thick and just over 43 from lug to lug. So this is a nice traditionally sized dress chronograph. In steel, it's fairly durable with lume and 100 meters of water resistance. I would call this an all-arounder rather than a hardcore dress watch, because hardcore dress watches aren't 100 meters. Now, another feature you could see to good effect is that it is quite well lumed. It's got a lovely white dial. It's sort of a granular pebbly or sandpaper-like texture. We have applique indices, marquee, and logo, and the watch features the St. Moritz text on the dial, and on the reverse side we have a Frédéric Piguet movement. This is actually the 1285, a high horology chronograph caliber that's been converted to use the Omega coaxial escapement. Now, it's got a lot of advantages here. Column wheel, vertical clutch, 52-hour power reserve, free sprung, chronometer certified. The column wheel feel is excellent. It has stop seconds. It has a quick set date. You can see the case is handsome and unusual in its shape. It has fascinating contours and fluting. There's even a lovely little bevel on the edge of the chronograph pushers. The strap is not broken in, so it's very stiff, but once it is broken in, it will fit beautifully on a smaller wrist. You could probably wear this on a wrist as small as 13.5 centimeters circumference. It's for him, it's for her. It does read as a larger watch on the wrist, maybe more like a 37 than a 35. I certainly would have guessed 36, 37 if I were just eyeballing this, but it does measure 35. So a lovely piece, and because of the Frédéric Piguet movement, you've got an echelon of horology and even a level of finish that is not common to Omega watches. So it's a pleasure to see it here. This is a cousin to the great Blancpain Frédéric Piguet 1185 high horology chronograph caliber. This one's just a little bit more durable. It's got stop seconds. It's got a higher beat rate, the coaxial escapement, chronometer certification. A lot to love right here. A full clasp, trigger actuated. And sticking with our budget theme, we have this lovely Longines Heritage single push piece column wheel chronograph. So the watch is part of the 180th anniversary collection at Longines from 2012. 40 millimeters in diameter in steel. You can see it's designed to reference early Longines wrist chronographs. It's got a lovely white lacquer dial with blued hands, a nostalgic red 12. It is a mono pusher, which means when you stop, you have to reset, but the feeling is excellent because this movement, which has its roots in the 7750, has been highly modified. So you can see now it's called the L7882. It's got a column wheel, a significantly improved power reserve at 54 hours. There's the column wheel right there, 4 crenellated towers, lets you know that's a mono pusher, oscillating pinion clutch, a really great looking watch in every regard. And it does wear a little bit large because of these Pastille style lugs, but remember, it's still a 40 millimeter case, so it's not too large. It's upscale with a lovely and buttery smooth factory calfskin strap, so it wears well on my wrist and would probably wear well on a wrist as small as 15 centimeters circumference. A lovely piece with a horologically relevant movement that does have some significant upgrades over a 7750. And you can see this watch has real ties to Longines history. Column wheel single push piece chronograph from the 180th anniversary Heritage collection. One heritage element that, well, I have to admit is a little bit inauthentic is the presence of a date. The presence of a date there for convenience, but I actually happen to like them. So while the historic prototype might not have had that, I find them useful, and I actually like dates on watches. Now, jumping over to something a little bit special, here we have a watch from Audemars Piguet. This was launched at SIGH 2018, Royal Oak Offshore Diver, and you can see a combination of a rose gold case and a titanium bezel with titanium hardware. So a really good look. You can see that where we have a crown shoulder, it's made of gray ceramic. The dial, it's not quite silver. It's a little bit closer to gray, but it's not nearly as steely gray as the ceramic and the titanium. The watch is hefty because primarily it is made of red gold, but it's got a lovely and dramatic contrast in color, texture, and tone. We'll pop the strap open, throw this on the wrist. A really nice watch, 42 millimeters in diameter, but you know these offshores always wear a bit large. Think of it as a 43 or a 44, and you have a better sense of how it's going to fit. Now, this is the standard diver, not a chronograph, not a complication, so it's not going to be as thick as those watches can be. 300-meter water resistance rating, plenty of luminescence, good ergonomics. We'll do a quick lume shot so you can see what you're getting for your money. It is a diver after all. The watch has a internal rotating bezel, and All three hands are loomed, which is nice because you know if your diver's working in the dark. And you can see how I've got the ability to move that internal rotating bezel and bring it into alignment with the minute hand so I can time my dive. Really special watch on both sides. As you can see on the reverse caliber 3120, we have the rotor in 22 karat gold with the coats of arms of the Audemars and Piguet families, reminding you that AP is the oldest continuously family-owned and run watchmaker in Switzerland. A nice sports watch architecture, not too thin, full balance bridge, free-sprung balance with a Gyromax style balance wheel, 60 hours of power reserve, hacking and quickset, well decorated. And this is a watch that has stood the test of time. The first Royalo came out in 72, the first Offshore in 1993, and I think you have to say at this point the Offshore has entered the pantheon. A lot of oversized sports watch pretenders have come and go, but this is the forever watch in the segment, and really the one by which all others are measured. A really cool piece, and the level of finish you'll find on the titanium and the rose gold, it is in every detail what you expect of a watch from this elite cadre of sports watch options. This is designed to go head-to-head with your Blancpain, with your Breguet, with your Lange even a little bit. A very special watch. But let's say you want something that offers more complication. You still want the durability, but maybe you want a smaller, lower profile brand. Well, Parmigiani Fleurier launched this Tondagraph GT back in 2020, and it helped to put the company on the map, or at least on a lot of collectors' radars. Previously, the company had idiosyncratic design that wasn't considered universally appealing by collectors, so they brought in noted freelance designer Dino Modolo, who's probably best known for co-designing the original Vacheron overseas in 1996. He took elements of the Toric, such as the bezel, and the Tonda, such as the lugs, and integrated them with a full integral bracelet. And so we get a very modern take on the integrated bracelet steel sports watch. Now, this is a 200-piece limited edition. You can see on the reverse side it mentions limited edition 200. There is a little bit of lume, although as you can see, very faint. The watch is 100 meters water resistant with a screw down crown, and it's got a chronograph plus an annual calendar and a big date. So you can see the big date, and then there is a month next to it, and that's how you read the calendar system. It only needs to be adjusted once a year during the jump from February to March. Automatic winding. It's got a high quality Valche manufacture, twin barrel, free sprung automatic movement. It's got a 4 hertz beat rate, Côte de Soleil, 22 karat winding mass. It is a Valche base, and you can see the Valche star on the base plate because Valche manufacture is the movement arm of Parmigiani Fleurier. All of this with a 45-hour power reserve. There is a quick set for the calendar system. Throw it on the wrist. You'll see it wears well. 42 millimeters in diameter, so it's not small, but with the shape of the lug and the curve of the bracelet, I find it wears really well on my wrist. It's also pretty thin, too. As you can see in profile, it will fit underneath a dress cuff. Jaeger-LeCoultre brought back its Polaris collection as a full-time offering in 2018, inspired by specifically the 1968 version of the E859 diving alarm. The Polaris collection took elements of the vintage watch but began to extrapolate and imagine what modern Polaris models would look like. So what you're looking at here came out in 2022. It's not a retro watch or a vintage re-edition. It's more of a what-if watch. What if the Polaris had continued evergreen through the decades and had evolved into a modern-day perpetual calendar? So you've still got plenty of lume. You've still got a internal rotating dive-style bezel. You've still got 100-meter water resistance and dial and case that are reminiscent of the Polaris 68. Taking a look in the dark, there's no shortage of lume, including of the seconds hand. And then we've got a lovely dial that's lacquered with a smoked gradient fade, a granular center, rose gold hardware, and the IWC mechanically programmed Kurt Klaus sequential system. So you just index the button, the number of days you've fallen behind if it stops, and everything, day, date, month, even the moon phase moves in sync to correctly indicate the current calendar. Even the year and the decade are driven. A watchmaker will set the century, but the year and the decade are mechanically driven, so it's a very user-friendly watch. You can see it has this huge vaulted sapphire to emulate 1960s plexiglass crystals, but this is a sapphire, make no mistake. Turn it all over, you can see the movement is the latest version of the 868 base. So this is the 868 AA, meaning it now has a 70-hour power reserve. A quick set, not really, but sort of, via the pusher adjuster. Allows you to index all of the calendar indications. What it does have is hacking seconds and a rugged free-sprung architecture. The watch wears well. It's a 42 millimeter. It's not too large and it's not too thick. So for a modular complication, it's actually quite compact in profile. I like the way it wears. It's got nice solidity to it. One thing, if you are borderline for the size, you can see that the strap is conforming. That is, it hugs the edge of the case, so it does have a little bit of stiffness built in. Keep that in mind. Finally, we have a unique example of the Bethune DB28 XP. So XP for extra plot. This came out in 2020, and it was the 10th anniversary model of the DB28, which won the GPHG Aiguille d'Or, or effectively Best Picture at the Oscars of Watchmaking back in 2011. This example has some unconventional features, at least in combination. As you can see, we have these blued bracing springs for triple parachute, blued hands, blued titanium globes acting as the hour indices, and then a microlight engraved base plate cap. So some of these features are present on the standard model, but all of them in combination are not. The watch is very thin. You'll find it's about 8.7 millimeters. It's 43 in diameter, and then it goes from about a 54.5 lug to lug with the lugs at full extension to about 50.5. So these are ergonomic spring-loaded floating lugs, and this is patented. You could see more reductive engraving of the case band. This is microlight again, and you can see all the nuance to the curvature and contour of the case itself. And then on the dial, by the way, I should mention Bethune makes dials, cases, and movements all in-house. But on the dial, we've got 1, 2, 3 shock protection springs, 2 barrels, manually wound. They cannot accidentally be overwound. That's patented. So the lugs are patented, the self-adjusting barrels are patented, the triple parachute shock protection patented, the titanium and white gold balance wheel patented. Even the curvature of the hairspring is a Bethune original and is patented. You can see that the finishing, particularly on the bridge for the balance, as good as anything you'll find elsewhere in the industry, and it bears mentioning names like Romain Gauthier, Grubel Forsey, and even Longines of Germany, and the very best work done at Holy Trinity brands to compare to this right here. It really is that good. You can see that the barrels feature snailing on their tops, and that the ratchet wheel actually has micro-beveled teeth, which is extraordinary attention to detail. All screw heads are polished on their top. We have a mirror-polished cap atop the barrel bridge, and it's a chevron shape, or I should say it's a deltoid shape, reminiscent of a leaf that Bethune co-founder and creative lead Denis Flageolet found while hiking outside his home in Laubersson, Switzerland. So that's where that shape comes from. A solid case back here, more fired blue titanium and microlight. The watch wears easily. Though broad, it's not thick. And this is a shorter set of lugs than you'll find on a lot of previous Bethune watches. So you can see how it will fit underneath the dress cuff. Really no problem in that regard. Super comfortable and agreeable on a 16 centimeter circumference wrist. This is a very, very versatile watch. It'll fit on many different wrists, and with grade 5 titanium construction, it's very light, hypoallergenic, and also extraordinarily scratch resistant. So there are many, many, many reasons to love this unique DB28 XP. Reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.